Welcome to Better Than Ever Live, coming to you live from the Champion Studio in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. My name is Dr. David Geyer. I am an orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, double board certified orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media medical expert. And my goal in everything, both in my practice and online, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere, my goal is to help you feel and perform your best, regardless of age, injury, or medical condition. Thank you so much for joining me this very first real episode of Better Than Ever Live. I hope wherever you're watching or wherever you're listening, I hope you're making today your masterpiece. We have a lot of cool stuff to get to, a lot of really interesting topics. So just a few of the things I want to talk about today. We're going to talk about a study that shows there may be a new diet strategy may work a little bit better in terms of helping you lose weight. And I know we hear that all of the time, but this one actually, there may be some logic to it. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. We're going to talk about 10,000 steps a day. You have heard that number for years and years and years about how you have to get 10,000 steps a day. Well, maybe you don't have to get so much. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the importance of having good listeners in your life and how that may actually prevent you from getting Alzheimer's and having your brain decline as you get older. My favorite research study of the day, we're going to talk about death by hot dog. I am completely serious about that. Death by hot dog. And as you're seeing on the screen, if you're watching this live, Facebook, YouTube, feel free to tell me your name, first name preferably, not some username, and where you're from. I'd love to hear what you're doing. But we're going to talk about that. And then finally, we're going to talk about sleep deprivation. We're going to talk about how long a period of sleep deprivation actually affects your brain performance and talk about how to get a good night's sleep. As I talk about everywhere on social media, this is meant for information and educational purposes only. I'm not your doctor. You're not my patient. I'm not, examining you or getting your medical records or tests or anything like that. I am giving you information that you can use to make your own decisions. If you have specific medical questions or medical concerns, please talk to your doctor. Okay, let me tell you a little bit before we get into the topics. This is the first real episode of Better Than Ever Live. I know I've done a trailer, but this is the first one. We're going to do this every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, 5 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States. And I don't know if you've been following the website. I've been doing the website since 2009. I've been doing social media then since, I guess Twitter was 2009, but Facebook was 2010, and then YouTube slowly after that. And at first, it was all orthopedic surgery, sports medicine injuries, sports and exercise injuries, knees, shoulders, that kind of thing. And I did that for years. And I still do a little bit of that. I write a newspaper column here in Charleston. But over the last few years, I've transitioned to more health and wellness information. That's somewhat because I'm now the medical expert for 2 TV news stations here in Charleston. But it's more that this is just what I like talking about. Things like fitness and exercise and nutrition and aging, men's health, women's health, children's health, things that really help you feel and perform better. So every Tuesday and Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to talk about anywhere from 3 to 5 new studies that help you feel better and live longer. And then I'm going to do a little bit more of a deep dive, nothing long, but a little bit more on one particular topic to really help you feel and perform your best. Now, if you're watching this on Facebook and YouTube and you think, well, I can't always be on my computer or can't always be on my phone, maybe I'm driving home from work, there is an audio version of this that comes out as a podcast the next day. So wherever you get your podcast, subscribe to Better Than Ever Live. You'll be able to listen to it the day after. Or if you're listening to this as a podcast right now and you do want to comment, subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/Dr. David Geyer. Click the bell. You'll get notified when I'm on live, or you can follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/Dr. David Geyer. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Preferably, use your first name, not some random weird username, and give me your thoughts on these topics that we're talking about today. Just know that I don't answer bone and joint injury questions on this show. That's not the purpose of this show. I do answer those somewhere, and I'll talk about that at the end of the show, or you can click the link below and you can basically see where I do that. But A lot to get to today. I've got my hydrogen water maker, and this is for real a hydrogen water maker. Maybe I'll talk about hydrogen water some other time. Friends of mine tell me it's just a water bottle with an LED light that comes on and it bubbles, and it's a big scam. But so far I like it. So I've got that ready to go. We're going to go ahead and start on topic. So the first one I want to talk about today is a new study that came out in the journal Nutrition, and it looks at maybe a better way to approach weight loss. I don't know how you are, but I would imagine the vast majority of adults in this country have tried some kind of strategy to lose weight, whether it's intermittent fasting or what I like to call time-restricted feeding, where you eat all your meals within an 8-hour period or 4-hour period. There's keto, sort of a low carb, ultra low carb, high fat. There's all different, Mediterranean diets, and there's all sorts of different diets to lose weight. What made this study interesting and why I wanted to bring it up here is that these researchers took over 200 people, 227 adults, and put them on one of three diets. One was essentially a keto diet. One was essentially just restricting how many calories they ate, cut their calories down below their normal levels. And then one was intermittent fasting. And it didn't matter which of the three those diets people were in. They lost on average, about 5% of their body weight, which is actually really good news. But here's what's interesting. The people there was a small group of that they did one, then they switched to another diet, then they switched to the third diet and did it that way. They doubled their weight loss. And I think this is really good. The thing about diets is if you go into, let's just say keto, and you think, all right, I'm going to give up carbs and eat high-fat foods the rest of my life, that's really hard to convince somebody to do. You can do that for a week or 2 weeks, but saying, hey, this is your new normal forever, they're going to probably give it up fairly quickly. The first time it gets hard, they binge, they do something else, and then they fall off the wagon and they stop doing it. But knowing that you only have to do this for 6 weeks or 12 weeks, and then you switch to something else, you do that for a little while and switch to something else, will definitely increase motivation. But the other good thing I like about this is that it improves what we call your metabolic flexibility. This is essentially keeping your body from getting used to one particular thing. One of the things I like to do is the OMAD diet, so to speak, 1 meal a day. So I really, most days, only eat 1 meal a day. That's good from a weight loss and for a lot of reasons that's good, but it's not good every day. You don't want your body to get used to that. So some days I'll do 2 meals, some days I'll do 3 just to switch it up. Being metabolically flexible is a very good thing. And in terms of losing weight, keeping yourself motivated by switching up your diets, I think probably a really good thing. And one thing back to that 5%, you're like, oh, they only lost 5% of their body weight. That's not nothing. Even if you're 100 or 150 pounds overweight, 5% is still a big deal. I mean, that's going to help with your blood sugar. That's going to help with your cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugars, just your overall risk of early death even. So even a little bit is certainly better than nothing. So for what that's worth. All right, the 10,000 step thing, because this one I wanted to tackle because I think almost everybody I know has heard that you have to take 10,000 steps a day. And there's some talk about where that came from and is that number real? And there are some benefits to 10,000 steps. But there was a study that just came out, researchers at the University of Massachusetts Amherst did this study where it's really interesting. They followed over 2,000 middle-aged people from 4 U.S. cities starting way back in 2005. The study went all the way to 2018, and by that point, almost 3/4 of the people in the study had died. But they wore accelerometers over that period of time. And so what the researchers wanted to know is, how many steps do you need to take to lower your risk of death? Well, it wasn't 10,000. What they found out that the people that got at least 7,000 steps still lowered their risk of early death 50 to 70% compared to people who didn't get 7,000 steps a day. It didn't matter if they were walking really fast or if it was just a leisurely stroll. You just had to hit 7,000 steps a day. And what they found was getting to 10,000 or more didn't lower your risk any more than that. The reason that is important to me is 10,000 steps, I'm not going to lie, is hard for a lot of people. Office workers, people that drive a lot, it's hard, and that can be sort of daunting. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try to do it and use standing desks and all that. I'm not saying you shouldn't try to do it, but that can be in and of itself sort of a barrier. So knowing you only have to hit 7,000 steps a day, maybe people are a little bit more likely to do it. Anything that gets you active, I am all for. But one of the things, and we're going to talk about sitting, I'm sure, in a future episode, but the key that's important to remember is that if you sit a lot, and I do too with all the computer stuff I do, I'm sitting a lot. Going to the gym and doing one workout doesn't negate all of that sitting. So finding ways to get steps throughout the day, even if it's just walking across your office to talk to a coworker instead of sending an email or a text, that is a very, very huge thing. All right, third topic I want to get to today is a mental health topic. And this one I thought was really interesting. There is a study that just came out about types of emotional support and what actually could prevent Alzheimer's, prevent dementia as you get older, build what you call cognitive resilience. And so these researchers, it's fascinating to me. They looked at 5 different types of support. They looked at having good listeners in your life. They looked at, let's see, where are the others? Love and affection. Let's see. Yeah, listening, advice, love and affection, emotional support, and sufficient contact. What they did is they took people in the original Framingham study, the famous heart study from the 1940s. They found over 2,100 people, and they basically looked at these 5 types of social support: listening, advice, love and affection, emotional support, and sufficient contact. What they found, and they measured brain volume in all these people. They measured people by neuropsychological tests to really get a sense of when their brain started to decline. Only one of those 5 types of emotional support prevented cognitive decline, and it was having good listeners in your life. And not so much in your 70s or 80s. This is when you were in your 40s and 50s, having people that were good listeners. And by good listeners, what we're talking about, and I'm probably not one of these, quite honestly, but it's not necessarily people who hear your story and then give you advice or solve your problems, but people who listen to you and are empathetic and sort of encourage you to talk more. It's sort of a safe person to talk to. That was better than love and affection. That was better than them touching you. That was better than emotional support. Having good listeners in your life prevented cognitive issues like Alzheimer's, like dementia. It's really fascinating that having that in your life is so important. So that may be something to think about, as you're going into adulthood and you've got, say, you're moving to a new city, or you're, married and now you basically spend all your time at home. Those are kind of interesting things to kind of keep in mind about having somebody in your life that can be a good sounding board. I will argue it's probably not just good for cognitive issues, your brain, Alzheimer's, dementia, that kind of thing. It's probably good from your mental health and just overall well-being generally. All right, like I said, my favorite study of the day, and that is death by hot dogs. This is a real thing. There's a study out of the University of Michigan that just came up yesterday, or not yesterday, it was sometime last week. But what they found out, the headlines are funny. There's a real purpose to this story. But they found out that eating a hot dog cuts 36 minutes off your life. By the end of your life. Eating 1 serving of chicken wings, 85 grams, 3.3 minutes off your life. And to be fair, who in the world is just eating 1 serving of chicken wings? I mean, they don't fill you up, so you end up eating like a dozen of them. So it's more than 3.3 years. But I just find this hilarious because everybody online, when I saw this this story, was posting these things on social media like RIP Joey Chestnut, the famous competitive eater. Let's be fair, you don't go into competitive eating if you're worried about ending your life early. But the point of the story is funny. I mean, you eat 1 hot dog, and over the course of our lives, we eat thousands of hot dogs, but it takes all this time off your life. But what they did was really interesting. These researchers didn't just look at chicken wings and hot dogs. They looked at tons of foods, 5,800 foods, and figured out which ones add to your life, which ones shorten your life, and by how much. And so there were good foods and bad foods. This reminds me a lot of inflammation, and we're going to talk about inflammation going forward, and systemic inflammation and how bad it's for you medically, how it can lead to osteoarthritis and so many different things. But foods have, numerous organizations rate foods based on inflammation, which ones are anti-inflammatory, which is good, or pro-inflammatory, which is bad. And there are scales for that. This one may be positive 50, this food may be negative 200. I'm a big fan of jasmine rice, and it's really inflammatory, which is not really good. But the purpose of those inflammation ratings is that over the course of any one meal, you want to generally be neutral or even a little positive as far as anti-inflammatory, certainly over the course of the day. This is the same thing. So what they found, these University of Michigan researchers, what they found, and this was published if you want to find it. I don't remember the source. So there were good foods and there were bad foods. The bad ones are probably not surprising to you. Highly processed meats. These are the lunch meats in the packages. This is beef, shrimp, pork, lamb, and vegetables grown in greenhouses. Those all sort of took time away from your life at the end. Whereas the beneficial foods, the foods that lengthen your life, probably not surprise either. Fruits and vegetables, but those that were grown in fields, not in greenhouses. Legumes, which are like beans, black-eyed peas, that kind of thing. Nuts, almonds, that kind of thing. And low environmental impact seafood. So the same thing kind of goes. Now, none of that should be terribly surprising, but one, if you're going to eat a hot dog, chicken wings, that kind of thing, just know that, hey, this may be just a rare treat, not something you do on a regular basis. And maybe you try to balance it out with some organic green vegetables as part of your dinner later on, something like that, so that you're overall sort of extending your life and not just filling it with foods that shorten your life. All right, and then last, I want to talk about sleep deprivation. This is one that is near and dear to my heart because I have been working on sleep now for easily a decade, trying to get my sleep better. And it goes through phases where it's good, phases where it's not so good, but it's something that means a lot to me. Sorry, I gotta pour my hydrogen water because I'm getting thirsty. So there was the study that came out this week in the journal PLOS ONE, and it's really interesting. What they did is they wanted to see how long a period of sleep deprivation affected your mental performance. So what these researchers did, they took 29 people between the ages of 20 and 22, so essentially college students, and for 4 days, and this was based on wearing wrist sensors to measure their activities. This was doing daily EEGs to measure their brain activity. It was mood and emotional and energy surveys. And then they did a test, the Stroop test, to measure basically brain processing speed and accuracy. And so what they did for 4 days, these 20 to 22-year-olds could sleep however much they want. And that's what set the baseline. So after 4 days, you average X amount of sleep. Then for the next 10 days, the researchers cut their sleep by 30%. So just to make the numbers easy, if somebody averaged 10 hours of sleep during those first 4 days, then they could only sleep 7 hours the next 10 days. Generally, obviously, those numbers are lower, but they cut their sleep 30% for 10 straight days. Now, it won't surprise you that then when they did the accuracy tests and the response times, it dropped. Their accuracy scores dropped from 100% to 95%. Their response times dropped 7%. But here's what was interesting. Then after the 10 days of sleep deprivation, they got the next 7 days to sleep as much as they want. After the 7 recovery days, 7 days to recover on their sleep, their accuracy was still down and their response times were still down, despite now 7 days to catch up. So whatever that period of sleep deprivation you're going through, that's going to basically have effects on you down the road. And that's something very, very important. And you might think, well, all right, now what is 7%? So my accuracy drops 5%. My response times drop 7%. Well, depending on what type of work you do, that could be a really big deal. In my world, I mean, if I do a surgery 5% worse, that's not real good, or if I'm 5% less accurate in it. But driving, there's so many types of jobs that, financial trades, if you make a mistake. I mean, I could come up with hundreds if I thought about it, where just a little bit of a drop is a big deal in terms of outcomes. And so one of the things that is so important to understand is that 1 or 2 nights of bad sleep isn't the end of the world, but it can't become a pattern. It can't become something you do for a long period of time because it gets very hard to dig out of that. And so that's why I want to talk about real quickly how to fix your sleep. Now, I am not by any means a sleep expert, but back in 2015, I interviewed a guy named Nick Littlehales. I don't know that he gave himself this nickname, but he's basically known as the world's sports sleep expert. He is the sleep consultant for tons of Olympic athletes, most of the big soccer teams in the world, Liverpool, Manchester United, Real Madrid, multiple national Olympic teams. He goes in and helps the players, helps the team optimize their sleep, because they're dealing with traveling all over the country and different time zones. They're playing games late at night and all this kind of stuff. So I interviewed him, and he gave me, and by the way, if you want to check out his book is fantastic. And I get no commission or anything on this. It's just a fantastic book. Nick Littlehales. It's called Sleep, The Myth of 8 Hours, The Power of Naps, and the New Plan to Recharge Your Body and Mind. And I'm going to give you the really quick version because I switched to this and it really does help. So the idea that a lot of people have is that, all right, you've got to get 8 hours of sleep, or based on whatever it is. Some people it's more, some people it's less. But it's that number 8 hours is sort of ingrained in our brains for whatever reason. Here's the problem with that number. When you're sleeping, you don't sleep one continuous period. You go through sleep cycles. And those cycles are usually about 90 minutes long, going through deep sleep or non-REM sleep, and then back through REM sleep. And they're 90-minute cycles, and that's pretty consistent. And if you wake up at the end of a cycle, you typically feel good. If you're in the middle of that cycle, then you wake up groggy and you just feel terrible. Well, what Nick suggests, and I love this, is that most people need 5 sleep cycles a night. That's 7.5 hours of sleep for most people. So the way you can fix your sleep is to get up at the same time every morning. And so that's what I do. I get up at 4:30, barring something really weird. I get up at 4:30, and I know that's early, but that's what I do. But maybe you get up at 6, and you're going to do that every morning. Then you work backwards from 6 o'clock. So if your goal is to get 5 sleep cycles, that's 7.5 hours, then you're going to want to be asleep by 10:30 if you're getting up at 6 a.m. Now, here's the genius of that. That's all pretty straightforward. That makes a lot of sense. But if for some reason you have to stay up past that, you're going out with friends or got a work assignment, whatever, then you should just say, all right, fine, I'm going to get 4 sleep cycles tonight and intentionally go to bed so that you fall asleep at midnight rather than trying to go at 11 and sort of struggling. That way you end on your 4 sleep cycles. That's the part that I think is a little unusual. And if you just can't sleep a certain night, then maybe you go to 1:30 and get 3 sleep cycles. And that does better than sort of haphazardly trying to figure out how much you sleep. Then your goal over the course of the week is to get somewhere between 30 and 35 sleep cycles, or what he calls CRPs. But here's the genius of the 30 to 35. You can make up for a night where you only get 3 CRPs or 4 CRPs by taking a 30-minute nap, which also counts as 1 CRP or 1 cycle. So between the sleep at night and the occasional naps during the day, you want to shoot for 30 to 35 CRPs. And if you get 4 one night, maybe 3 the next night, you don't want to go more than 2 straight nights without getting 5 CRPs if you can help it. You can't just make it all up based on naps. So that's how I would approach it. Try it. I mean, again, this is not medical advice. But it has worked for me largely in terms of making myself get more sleep. I don't worry about am I getting 6 or 7. I just try to get enough CRPs. And again, waking up at the end of one is remarkably better than being in the middle of a sleep cycle when your alarm goes off. So that's something to think about. All right, that is all I have for you. I do want to address one thing real quick, and that is, like I said earlier, I am the medical expert for 2 TV news stations here in Charleston. And yesterday, I did a video for them, or a segment for them, on COVID-19, the vaccine, and pregnant women. And it was a study. Now I've put it on YouTube and Facebook. I think it went on today, but it may be yesterday. You can check my YouTube channel for it. And I've gotten quite a few negative comments from anti-vaxxer people. And like I said, I'm not giving you medical advice. This is information and education. What I will say, and I posted a link to the study that came from. It was in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They studied over, I think it was 869,000 pregnant women over an entire year who delivered babies at 499 hospitals in the United States. This wasn't, hey, I know a doctor that delivered 2 people and they got this. It wasn't anecdotal stories. It was a year's worth of data, almost 500 hospitals, almost 900,000 pregnant women, over 18,000 of those women who had COVID while they were pregnant. And all I was trying to do was say, hey, look, women who are pregnant that get COVID, 40% more likely to have preterm deliveries. They're 6 times more likely to end up in the ICU and 10 times more likely to die in the hospital. That is an opinion. That's just based on an entire country's worth of data over the year. It doesn't matter to me. All I'm giving is the information. If you listen to all that and say, I still don't want to do it, that is your business. I'm not telling you should try to do it. I would tell you might want to talk to your OBGYN. I think they will feel very strongly that you should do it. But I'm not trying to change anybody's opinion. I'm just giving you all the information. You do with it what you want. So that is all I have got for you. Let's see, just go through a couple comments real quick. It doesn't show up well on the screen. Daniel says, what's the difference between vegetables grown in a greenhouse and those in a field? I'm not sure I can explain the biology necessarily in terms of why it's different, but open grown fields with natural light and natural soil, in theory, preferably more organic stuff with less pesticides and things like that, thought to be better for you than those maybe grown under greenhouse lights and things like that. I will tell you, I don't know the science behind it. I'm just telling you that that's what they found from a nutritional standpoint. Perry, hot dogs. I love it too. All right. I'm trying to see what everybody else says. Megan. Yeah, it's hard. These long comments don't fit on the screen. Just check out. I'll see if I can put a link to the thing that she gives a long comment about diets and things like that. That's just, there's not one right diet. Try different things, see what works best for you. And then maybe switch it up periodically. I feel like people will have better results long time, and this study definitely shows that. All right, that is all I've got for you. A couple things real quick. One, again, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube and you can't be online every day, check out the audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, should be on Spotify soon, Google, Amazon, Stitcher, all those type of places. Better Than Ever Live. If you're listening to the podcast but you want to comment, watch on YouTube or Facebook every Tuesday, Thursday, 5 p.m. And then one last thing. I said I was going to tell you at the end of this. I do answer orthopedic questions, sports and exercise injury questions, but not on this show, and actually not on YouTube or Facebook anymore for legal reasons and some other things. But I do a monthly chat on a community that I created, the Better Than Ever community on Locals, betterthanever.locals.com. The link is in the description below. But once a month for supporters of that community, I do a chat where I do answer questions for basically until we run out of questions. It's just where, I can do it. I've only got a limited amount of time, and I get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions. I just can't conceivably keep up with them. So I do it once a month there. People that are premium supporters can actually message me directly through the platform, which is always nice. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you Thursday. I don't know all the topics, but I do know one that we're going to talk about, which is people that use their phones while they exercise. That is not good for your workout. Your speed, your performance, all aspects of your workout will drop. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Thank you much for joining me. I will see you next time.